For Ian Qin, life is a dead end. Failing in school, tormented by a wealthy rival, and plagued by a mysterious illness, his future seems destined for a grim, early end. But one night, in a seedy alley, a strange woman makes him an offer that sounds like madness. A chance to defy heaven and rewrite his own destiny. The price? Join a secret society he knows nothing about. The risk? It could cost him his life. But with only 6 months left to live, Ian is about to discover that some risks are worth taking, and that the world he knows is only a sliver of the truth. A piece of chalk flew across the classroom, striking Ian Qin squarely in the face and exploding in a puff of white dust. He flinched, his face flushing crimson, but dared not say a word. Mr. Liu, his homeroom teacher, was already mid-rant. Ian's score of 189 on the final exam was, as usual, the lowest in the class. It dragged down the class average, and with it, Mr. Liu's annual bonus. The teacher's voice boomed through the room. He gestured out the window towards a construction site across the street, where a new high-rise was being built. He told Ian that at this rate, he'd be working construction the moment he graduated. Ian muttered under his breath that it was all in service of the people. A few students around him snickered, their laughter laced with contempt. From the back of the room, a tall, handsome boy named Kyle Lin piped up, his voice dripping with condescension. He said he'd have his dad, the CEO of the company building that tower, give Ian an extra $250 a month. The classroom erupted in derisive laughter. Only one person, a girl in the front row, didn't laugh. She kept her head down, her pretty face a mask of indifference as she focused on the test papers on her desk. Beside Ian, his childhood friend Luke Qin shot back that Ian would rather starve than work for Kyle's family. The two had been whispering before Mr. Liu had noticed, which started the whole tirade. Kyle just laughed, telling them they could starve together then. Ian coolly called him a moron. Mr. Liu slammed his hand on the blackboard, silencing the class. He shot Ian a glare but said nothing to Kyle, telling Ian and Luke to get out if they spoke again. This was the last day of cram school before the winter break, just 3 days before the new year. But for the seniors, the pressure was immense, with only 125 days left until the college entrance exams. When the final bell rang, Ian packed his bag and fled. He couldn't focus. Every minute in that school felt like torture. Not far from the school gates stood a long, imposing wall that enclosed Maplewood University, one of the most prestigious schools in the country. It was so vast, it was often said that Maple City was a city built inside the university, not the other way around. Every kid in Maple City dreamed of getting in, but its admission standards were crushingly high. Ian ran his hand along the weathered brick of the wall, a self-deprecating smile on his face. He once dreamed of attending Maplewood, too. Now, anyone who knew him would tell him to get a grip. He shouted into the empty street that he would get into Maplewood in his next life. A voice sneered from a Mercedes that had pulled up beside him. Kyle Lin's head poked out from the back seat. He spat on the ground, saying he'd eat his own crap if Ian could get into Maplewood in 8 lifetimes. Ian told him to go home and do just that. Kyle retorted that Ian was too much of a sickly weakling to even haul bricks for him, then ducked back into the car as it sped away, leaving Ian in a cloud of exhaust. The two had been enemies ever since a fight in their sophomore year. Kyle, an athlete, had beaten Ian so badly that he'd spent half a year in the hospital. The missed classes, combined with his already fragile health, had sent his grades plummeting. Ian watched the Mercedes disappear, his fists clenched, before continuing on his way. His path home led through a dark alley flanked by seedy massage parlors and hourly motels. The spinning, multicolored lights were hypnotic, and scantily clad women often lingered in the doorways, calling out things that made his face burn. He'd grown used to it, though he couldn't help but steal curious glances from time to time. Suddenly, a figure stepped out from the shadows, her voice strangely captivating. She offered to show him the way. Ian glanced at her. She was dressed in what could only be described as a tacky rural outfit, a garish floral print padded jacket, bright green pants, and a pink scarf wrapped around her head. But despite the clothes, her features were striking, a delicate nose, a sharp chin, and eyes that shone with an intelligent light. She looked to be in her 30s, with the unique charm of a mature woman. He told her he wasn't blind. There was a jarring disconnect between her appearance and her aura. She didn't seem like an ordinary person. She smiled, saying she liked his attitude. Ian clutched his backpack tighter, trying to signal that he was just a student passing through. He was 18, technically an adult, but he wasn't interested in what she was selling. The woman's eyes were fixed on him, as if he were dinner on a plate. She giggled, assuring him he was exactly who she was looking for. Annoyed, Ian tried to push past her, but she didn't move. She told him he'd been frail and sickly since childhood, constantly in and out of hospitals, draining his family's savings. She said the doctors could never find anything wrong, and some people even whispered he was cursed, haunted by a malevolent spirit. Ian stopped dead, stunned. He asked how she knew all that. She explained that he was a vessel for a fallen star, his body's energy channels all blocked, leaving him drained of vitality. She said he was fated to die young. Based on her reading, he had about 6 months left. His face flushed with anger. He grabbed the front of her jacket, accusing her of cursing him. The woman's eyes flashed with a blue light, so cold it felt like ice in his veins. In that moment, he felt completely exposed, as if she could see right through him. He quickly let go. He asked her what she wanted. She replied simply, to save his life. Ian's hands trembled. He didn't want to believe her, but what if she was right? He asked who she was. She introduced herself as Talia of the Sacred Gate, a mystic, a seer, a prophet, whatever he wanted to call her. She said the Sacred Gate needed a genius like him. Ian scoffed. A moment ago he was a short-lived wretch, now he was a genius. But her words had terrified him. Talia's expression turned deadly serious. She told him that if he joined the Sacred Gate, she could help him defy heaven and rewrite his destiny. The words hung in the air, heavy with promise. To unblock his meridians, fortify his core, and open his 7 senses. He would become someone new, his body transformed. Ian's suspicion returned. He asked if this was the part where she asked him for tens of thousands of dollars as payment. Talia shook her head. She didn't want his money, only him. The words sounded vaguely remote. He told her no one would believe such nonsense. Talia shrugged, saying they could pretend they'd never met. But she warned him that when his condition finally erupted, it would be like a volcano. Not even the gods could save him then. She asked if he'd been feeling extreme fatigue lately, with chest tightness and shortness of breath. She said those were the signs of an impending eruption. Ian called her a liar and ran, sprinting out of the alley. This time, Talia didn't stop him. Just as he reached the street, a sharp pain lanced through his chest, the old affliction, back with a vengeance. His strength vanished. The pain drained the color from his face, and sweat beaded on his forehead. He staggered, catching himself against a wall. His head spun. A chorus of voices whispered in his ear. 6 months left. You're going to die? She's a liar. Above, dark clouds roiled, and a crack of thunder split the sky. A flicker of determination ignited in Ian's eyes. He turned and slowly, deliberately, walked back into the alley. He was done with hospital rooms, for drips, and the smell of disinfectant. He wanted to live. He was going to defy heaven and rewrite his destiny. The sky was growing dark, the air thick and heavy with an oppressive humidity. Ian staggered back into the alley, his sudden attack leaving him with no other choice. This was it, his one and only hope to change his future. He prayed the woman, Talia, was still there. He stumbled forward, his pace quickening with desperation. He was so focused that he didn't hear someone calling his name from behind. Ian Qin scratched his head, watching his friend hurry into the seedy alley. He muttered to himself, wondering if Ian was really going to one of those places. He knew the pressure was high, but he didn't think Ian would resort to that. A wave of irritation washed over him. He couldn't believe his friend would do something like that without him. On a strange impulse, Luke quietly followed. Ian, oblivious, finally saw her. Talia was leaning against a wall, her arms crossed, staring blankly at the sky as if her soul had left her body. He let out a sigh of relief, his voice suddenly syrupy sweet. He called her Big Sister, figuring anyone who could rewrite his destiny deserved some respect. Talia slowly turned her head and smiled, as if she knew he'd be back all along. She corrected him, telling him to call her senior sister, as she was accepting him into the order on their master's behalf. Ian asked where their master was. Talia grumbled that she had no idea where the old man had died off to, leaving her with all the annoying work. Ian didn't know how to respond. The pain in his chest was still there, a dull, persistent ache. Talia seemed to notice his discomfort. She told him to hurry up, as she was on a tight schedule. She stepped forward and reached her hand toward his abdomen. Ian jumped back, blushing. This initiation ritual was a bit more hands-on than he'd expected. Talia rolled her eyes. She chided him for his dirty mind, explaining that she was transferring the sex core technique to him and leaving a trace of spiritual energy, or chi, in his dantian, his body's energy core, to guide him. Once that was done, he would officially be a disciple of the Sacred Gate. He asked if they had to do it right here. The whole scene felt absurdly casual. The gloomy sky, the flashing neon lights of the parlors, the scantily clad women nearby. Talia shot back, asking if he'd prefer she rent a room. Ian quickly shook his head, saying that right here was fine. From his hiding spot, Luke saw the two of them talking in the corner. He thought he heard something about getting a room. Staring at Ian's back and Talia's form, his face flushed. He spat on the ground, muttering about how his friend had truly gone bad, and with such a tacky-looking country girl, no less. He turned and ran home. Talia glanced in Luke's direction for a second, then dismissed it. She began to speak, her voice low and serious. She instructed Ian to commit her words to memory, for this was the core internal technique of the Sacred Gate. The chi gathers in the dantian, rises through the 12 major points, flows through the body's primary energy meridians, and after one full circulation, returns to the dantian. That, she explained, was one complete cycle. He was to perform at least 18 cycles every day, without fail. As Ian felt the chi moving through him, he memorized its path and Talia's every word. Miraculously, the pain in his chest began to fade. The chi circulated through his body 3 times before settling back in his dantian. Only when she was sure he had memorized the path did Talia remove her hand. She warned him that this was the sacred gate's most protected secret, passed down only by word of mouth. If he ever revealed it to anyone, there would be nowhere to hide. He would die. Her eyes were cold and sharp, and he knew she wasn't joking. He said he understood, but still found it hard to believe they would actually kill someone in this day and age. Talia explained that sectarian conflicts were bloody affairs, and a single death was nothing. She gave an example: their rivals, the Shadow Gate. If he ever met one of their members, he would have to kill them before they killed him. Ian felt a shiver run down his spine. Suddenly, rewriting his destiny didn't seem like such a great choice. Talia seemed to read his thoughts. She told him that the die was cast the moment he met her. It was his choice, and now his responsibility. There was no turning back. She said the world was not what he thought it was, and that he would come to understand in time. She then explained that the sacred gate had 7 branches: sword, medicine, divination, law, talismans, mysticism, and silence. He could now choose one to study. Ian's eyes lit up. He asked if the divination branch could be used to predict the answers on the college entrance exams. Talia told him that divination was far more complex than that, and besides, he couldn't choose that branch right now. He then asked about the talisman branch, imagining slapping a magic charm on someone to make them obey his every command. Talia's smile stiffened. That one was also not an option. Frustrated, he asked why he couldn't choose them. She simply asked if he was a walking book of 10,000 questions. He sighed and chose the medicine branch. After all the pain he'd endured, the thought of helping others escape it was appealing. Talia seemed to relax. She quickly opened her bundle, revealing a needle pouch, a small wooden box, and a thick book with the character for medicine on the cover. She explained that the pouch contained 7 sacred resonance needles. The box held 1 reverse heaven and change body pill, and the book contained all the medical knowledge of their sect, including acupuncture. She told him the pill had to be taken in a quiet place, while continuously circulating his chi to help unblock his meridians, fortify his core, and open his 7 senses. Ian took the 3 items. It dawned on him why he couldn't choose the other branches. Talia had only brought the inheritance for the medicine branch. It seemed his choice had been made for him long ago. The medical book was just a stack of A4 paper in a cheap binder. If she hadn't done all this for free, he would have been convinced she was a con artist. He asked what he should do if he had questions. Talia's reply was blunt. If he couldn't figure it out, he wasn't worthy of being a disciple and could choose to take his own life. He then asked about the rules of the sacred gate. She gave him 4 words: uphold your heart, follow your will. As long as his heart was just, he could do as he pleased, even kill. Ian swallowed hard, asking if killing was really okay. She replied that eliminating evil is a form of good. He asked for her contact information. Talia refused, saying she would find him when the time was right. She told him to focus on his exams, promising a surprise. As a final instruction, she told him to memorize the medical book as soon as possible and then burn it, warning him of dire consequences if it fell into the wrong hands. With that, she slung her bundle over her arm and sauntered away, leaving Ian standing alone in the alley, completely bewildered. It all felt like a dream, but he knew, deep down, that this bizarre encounter was the beginning of a completely new life. Talia strolled out of the alley and toward a public square. On the west side of the square sat a fleet of 5 luxury cars, from massive Mercedes G-Wagons and a Rolls-Royce Phantom. A dozen bodyguards in black suits and ties stood guard, exuding an air of raw power. When they saw the tackily dressed woman approach, they all bowed in unison, their voices respectful. They greeted her as Ms. Fan. The scene was bizarre, a group of menacing men in black bowing to a woman who looked like a peasant. The onlookers who had been admiring the cars began to whisper among themselves. The rear door of the Phantom opened, and a young woman in a sharp business suit stepped out. She was stunningly beautiful, with a perfect figure and a face that seemed to radiate a cool light. But her expression was icy, as if she could freeze the air around her. She greeted Talia, calling her boss. Talia chuckled, unfazed by the strange looks from the crowd. She teased her assistant, saying that a woman who could get by on her looks alone chose to work for her instead. The assistant's face remained a placid mask. She simply replied that it was her choice. Talia sighed, lamenting her assistant's cold demeanor and wondering when she would ever get married. The assistant remained silent, as if she hadn't heard a word. Changing the subject, Talia asked for an update on the situation in the U.S. The assistant reported that the stock market was in a downward trend, and the stock they were targeting had dropped over 6% that day. Talia sounded unimpressed, asking if that was all. She instructed her to increase the pressure the next day. Then, she ducked into the Phantom. The assistant walked around to the other side and got in. Soon, the convoy pulled away, heading for the highway out of Maple City. Inside the car, Talia leaned back against the plush leather, her eyes on the starlit ceiling. She murmured to herself, speaking to her absent master. She spoke of the boy, a fallen star whose fate was a tangled mess of misfortune. Even with his destiny rewritten, trouble would follow him. No one could see his future. She questioned why her master wanted him in the sacred gate, lamenting that the pill she gave him was meant for her own daughter. She demanded compensation, wondering aloud where her master had been for the past 3 years. The assistant, scrolling through a tablet, glanced at her boss. She was used to Talia's strange monologues. The car fell silent as Talia stared out the window, a brilliant, knowing light dancing in her eyes. Back in the city, the dark clouds continued to churn but held back their rain. Ian stood frozen for a long time, clutching the 3 items from Talia. It wasn't until a heavily made-up woman asked if he wanted a shampoo that he snapped back to reality. He brusquely told her he had no money and ran out of the alley. He could feel the chi, a faint but real presence coiled in his dantian, a constant reminder that what had just happened was real. The front door to his apartment was ajar. He pushed it open to find his father, David Qin, sitting on the sofa, reeking of alcohol and glaring at him. David's voice was thick with anger as he demanded to know why Ian had skipped the evening study session and how he had done on his exams. He already knew the answer, dead last again. In Ian's memory, his father was 2 different people. The dividing line was an afternoon 10 years ago, when Ian was 10. He came home from school to find that his parents had divorced. His mother had already left, taking his 5-year-old sister with her, without so much as a backward glance. The warmth had vanished from their home that day. Ian quickly hid the items behind his back. He mumbled that he'd missed too many classes in his sophomore year and had no chance of catching up. His father sneered, calling it an excuse. He said any other kid would have already caught up. Ian retorted that he wasn't any other kid. He was his. His father's face darkened with fury. He had seen the class rankings that afternoon. Ian's score of 189, last in the entire school, had filled him with a sense of public shame, which was why he'd been drinking. Ian shot back that if Kyle Lin hadn't put him in the hospital, he would have gotten good grades. He was, after all, a student at a top experimental high school. He'd gotten in on his own merit. The mention of the fight made David's face grow even darker, a flicker of pain in his eyes. He had tried to reason with the school and Kyle's parents, but they'd brushed him off. Kyle's mother had even used her connections to have David's boss at the power company pressure him into dropping it. In the end, he'd accepted a paltry $10,000 in settlement money and let the matter go. You couldn't fight people like that. David waved a dismissive hand, saying there was no point in dredging up the past. He told Ian he just wasn't cut out for academics. But Ian, thinking of the promise of a new destiny, felt a glimmer of hope. He said that if it were possible, he would try his best to get into a university. In the next 100+ days, maybe he could pull off a miracle. His father scoffed, telling him that even if he got into a third-rate college, he didn't have the money to pay for it. Their finances were already stretched thin on David's single salary, half of which went to his drinking and the other half to Ian's medical bills. They were drowning in debt. Ian said he would find a way himself and started to walk toward his room. David grabbed his arm, snatching the wooden box, book, and needle pouch from him. He demanded to know what Ian was hiding. Ian lunged for them, but his father shoved him aside. David flipped through the medical book, finding the contents incomprehensible but disliking the look of it. He opened the wooden box and found a dry, dull red pill that looked like a shrunken piece of bread. Finally, he unrolled the needle pouch and saw the 7 gleaming silver needles. He demanded to know what this junk was. Ian snatched the items back while his father was distracted. David pointed at the box, asking if the pill was meant to be eaten. Ian shot back that it was, and that after eating it, he would become an immortal. He then rushed into his room and slammed the door shut. David pounded on the door, yelling for his son not to be a fool and eat something that could kill him. From inside, Ian yelled back that his death would probably make his father's life easier. The pounding stopped. Silence fell, broken only by the sound of David's heavy, ragged breathing on the other side of the door. No parent truly wants to give up on their child. Only after being beaten down by reality time and again do they finally, tearfully, let go. A moment later, a soft knock came at the door. David's voice, now gentle, came through the wood. He told Ian he'd already spoken to HR at his work. If Ian didn't get into a university, he could get a job there. He'd start as a temp, but he could become a full-time employee when David retired. Ian's tone softened. He knew that beneath the anger and alcohol, his father loved him. He asked if they could talk about it after the exams. David's voice was filled with shame as he repeated that they had no money for him to repeat a year and no money for college tuition. Ian asked quietly what would happen if he got into a prestigious university. His father told him to wake up, that their family wasn't that lucky. But Ian pressed, asking what if he really did get into a top school, like Maplewood University. His father's response was swift and decisive. He would sell the house to pay for his education. But in his heart, he didn't believe it for a second. For Ian to get into Maplewood with his current grades, their ancestors' graves would have to do more than smoke. They'd have to be engulfed in a pillar of fire. Ian sealed the deal. One word as a bond. Through the door, father and son made a pact. One was serious, the other was just humoring him. Alone in his room, Ian stared at the pill in his hand. The reverse heaven and change body pill. The name was impressive, but the pill itself looked like garbage. He worried it might actually kill him. He picked up the medical book, but the text was dense and obscure. It would take months to memorize. Looking out the window at the moon, and hearing his father's deafening snores from the other room, Ian gritted his teeth. Fortune favors the bold. He decided to go for it. After double-checking the lock on his door, he stripped off his outer clothes and sat cross-legged on his bed. He popped the pill into his mouth. It dissolved instantly, a fiery sensation spreading from his stomach throughout his entire body. His temperature skyrocketed. Ian immediately began to circulate his chi as Talia had taught him. A torrent of energy flooded into his dantian, swelling into a powerful cluster. It surged through his meridians, stretching them taut and forcing countless impurities out through his pores. His body trembled violently. The sensation was agonizing, like millions of ants crawling under his skin. He wanted to give up, but the thought of the bleak future awaiting him gave him the strength to endure. One must fight for their life at least once, or live with regret forever. In a daze, he saw his mother. She was as beautiful as he remembered, standing at a distance, looking at him with deep affection. He silently asked her if their divorce was his fault. She didn't answer. He asked why she never came back to see him. His body was a raging tempest, and tears streamed down his face. The night passed quickly. By morning, Ian's body was encased in a hard, black, foul-smelling shell. He sat perfectly still, like a statue. His father had knocked on his door before leaving for work, but Ian hadn't responded. By noon, his body finally twitched. A crack appeared in the black shell. It began to break away in chunks, revealing smooth, tender skin underneath, as flawless as a baby's. Ian's eyes snapped open, two sharp beams of light flashing within them before settling into a deep, profound gaze. He had always been handsome, but now, with his flawless complexion, bright eyes, and chiseled features, he was devastatingly attractive. He marveled at his transformation, a feeling of pure bliss washing over him. Then he smelled it, a putrid, fishy stench. He leaped off the bed, his movements as swift as lightning. The bedsheet was covered in large, black scabs. He threw open the window, gasping for fresh air. He bundled up the ruined sheet and all the scabs, took them outside, and then dove into the small bathroom. After a long, vigorous shower, he felt better than he ever had in his life. The chronic tightness in his chest was gone, replaced by a feeling of immense, almost untamable power. He tried to brush his teeth, but accidentally crushed the glass cup in his hand, thankfully without injury. With this new constitution, he felt he would never be sick again. If he could go back to that fight with Kyle, he'd confidently declare he could take on 10 of them. After changing into clean clothes and throwing the bundle of scabs in the dumpster downstairs, he sat cross-legged on his bed again, circulating his chi to explore his new state. His meridians were now thick and strong, shimmering with a crystalline light. His dantian, what Talia called his earthly core, was now protected by a thick membrane, pulsing rhythmically like a second heart. The third change, the opening of the 7 senses, was more mysterious. He consulted the medical book and discovered it referred to his vision, hearing, smell, taste, touch, body awareness, and cognition. That explained his newfound mental clarity, sharp hearing, and physical strength. The book described key acupoints surrounding each of the 7 senses. Ian instinctively focused his chi around his eyes. Instantly, his irises turned a deep, emotionless blue. The world sharpened into impossible detail. He could see individual dust motes on his alarm clock, the finest veins on a leaf, and could even tell the sex of a fly buzzing in the distance. It was like having a microscope built into his eyes. It was incredible. He wondered what his other senses could do. A dog's sense of smell? Supersonic hearing? He was practically a superhero. He wanted to keep observing, but he felt his chi draining rapidly. He quickly stopped. Just a few moments of using the enhanced vision had consumed 1/5 of his energy. The abilities were powerful, but they came at a cost. The unblocked meridians increased the speed of his chi circulation. The fortified core increased his storage capacity, and the 7 awakened senses enhanced his ability to survive. The techniques of the sacred gate were truly extraordinary. Overflowing with excitement, Ian picked up the medical book again. Though the words were still archaic, he could now grasp their meaning. He read the entire book from beginning to end, and to his astonishment, he found that every single word was perfectly imprinted in his mind. He could recite it flawlessly. His enhanced sense of cognition had given him an eidetic memory. He hadn't even been circulating his chi. His heart pounded in his chest. He knew what this meant. He grabbed a textbook, flipped through a few pages, then closed his eyes to recall them. A shiver ran down his spine. It was true. He went to the window and yelled out in triumph that he had transformed from a failure into a genius. From the apartment below, Luke Chin's head popped out. He yelled back, telling Ian to stop dreaming and asking if he was tired from his escapade the previous night. Ian just grinned, replying that after last night, they were no longer in the same world. Luke grumbled under his breath about Ian making a big deal out of losing his virginity, annoyed that his friend hadn't included him. Ian just shook his head at the misunderstanding and went back inside. After confirming his new ability, he reread the medical book 3 more times to be certain he had it all memorized. Then, as Talia had instructed, he found a metal basin and set the book on fire. He was glad his father had only glanced at it. Otherwise, according to Talia, there would have been a heavy price to pay. To his surprise, after the book turned to ash, a gleaming gold coin lay in the basin. He had no idea how that trick worked. Talia hadn't mentioned it. If he'd burned the book outside, he might have missed it completely. The coin had the character for sacred on one side and the head of a mythical beast on the other. It felt like a token from a game. He bit it, leaving a tooth mark. It seemed to be pure gold. He wondered how much a pawn shop would give him for it, but he wasn't foolish enough to sell it. It was obviously his proof of membership in the sacred gate. He didn't want to lose it, so he found a nail and painstakingly punched a hole through it, then threaded it onto a leather cord and wore it around his neck. His stomach rumbled, reminding him he hadn't eaten since the night before last. He went to the kitchen table and found a $100 bill. David's fatherly love was always gruff and direct. Despite his drinking, he never let Ian go without pocket money or food. The neighborhood bun shop was quiet. It was between the lunch and dinner rush. As he approached, the savory aroma of steamed buns made his stomach ache with hunger. He told the owner he wanted 5 steamers of beef buns. The owner, a kind woman in her 40s who knew his father, was surprised. He usually only ate 1. Ian explained that he was extra hungry today. She was skeptical he could eat 5 and suggested starting with 2. The steaming buns arrived, large and generously filled. Ian doused them in vinegar and chili oil and began to eat ravenously. With his enhanced sense of taste, he could perceive deeper layers of flavor. He imagined if he focused his chi, he could probably discern the freshness of the meat and every single spice used. The owner watched him, telling him to slow down and asking if he hadn't eaten in days. Ian mumbled that he'd missed 3 meals. The woman sighed, lamenting that a boy without a mother is never properly cared for, and chiding his father for not finding a stepmother. Ian said he was fine without one. It was one less person to boss him around. Suddenly, the owner leaned in, a ray of light catching his face. She exclaimed over how good his skin looked, asking if he was wearing makeup. His fair skin seemed to glow, and combined with his dark, thick hair, it gave him a completely different aura. The woman stared mesmerized, but Ian was far more interested in the buns. He ignored her and kept eating. She couldn't help but ask again if he was using some expensive face cream. A woman's pursuit of beauty, after all, knows no age. He asked her if she thought he could afford it. She remarked that he must take after his mother, who was a famous beauty in her day. She started to say more, but caught herself. Ian's thoughts about his mother were less painful now, perhaps a side effect of his transformation. He simply agreed that his mother was very beautiful. The woman muttered that it was cruel of her to leave and not send a single word in 8 years. Ian interrupted, saying he'd misjudged his appetite. He didn't want 5 steamers. He could actually eat 7. The owner stared in disbelief, but seeing his determined expression, she brought them out, saying he could return what he couldn't finish. He thanked her. After devouring all 7 steamers, the equivalent of 7 people's meals, the gnawing hunger finally subsided. He paid the bill, using up all the money his dad had given him plus 5 of his own, and walked out of the shop, leaving the owner staring after him in utter shock. The warm sun felt good on his skin. He now had a clear plan. He would use his eidetic memory to catch up on his studies. At the same time, he needed to master the knowledge in the medical book. It could very well be his livelihood one day. The book contained many difficult passages. To understand them, he needed more information. With that thought, he headed straight for the internet cafe. Luke Qin, out shopping for the new year with his dad, saw Ian walk into the cafe from a distance. Luke's dad sighed, telling his son to spend less time with Ian. He pointed out that going to internet cafes so close to the exams was why Ian only scored 189. Luke just grunted in agreement, though he thought to himself that playing video games was nothing compared to what Ian had been up to the night before. His dad continued, reminding him that while his own scores were only in the 400s, if he worked hard, he still had a chance at a decent college. Luke nodded, walking away with his father, in the opposite direction of the internet cafe. The internet cafe was a cacophony of shouts and curses, thick with smoke. Ian, however, sat beaming at a computer screen, excitedly scrolling through web pages. After 2 hours of intense research, comparing and cross-referencing, he had finally begun to understand parts of the medical book. It was a significant breakthrough. His enhanced mind didn't just afford him a perfect memory. His comprehension had soared, making everything feel clearer, more transparent. He finally understood what Talia meant when she said those who couldn't grasp the teachings were unworthy of the sacred gate. He only left when hunger became unbearable. His father, David, worked in emergency power line repair, which meant he was busiest during holidays, often not coming home all night. In Ian's memory, the new year was no different from any other day, perhaps even lonelier. At least on normal days, he might see his father passed out drunk. The apartment was cold and damp. He'd left the window open when he rushed out that morning. Ian cooked a pot of noodles with an egg sauce and ate heartily. As he ate, he planned his future, his eyes growing brighter. The promise he'd made to his father about getting into a top university now felt less like a desperate gamble and more like a real possibility. A thrilling thought took hold. Why not aim for the very best? Why not try for Maplewood University, right on his doorstep? The idea surged through him, turning hope into appetite. He devoured the entire pot of noodles. One thing was certain, his transformation had turned him into a serious eater. For the first time, his future felt clear, bright, and truly in his own hands. But his new appetite created a new problem: money. The meal and the internet cafe had cost him $115, and he knew his father wouldn't give him more spending money for a few days. He needed to find a source of income. A thought struck him. He hurried to his bedroom, unlocked a drawer, and pulled out a large, dog-shaped piggy bank. It held all the New Year's cash gifts he'd saved since he was a child. Gritting his teeth, he smashed it with a hammer. Bills of all denominations scattered across the floor. He carefully counted it all, 4,255. It should be enough for a while. With his money problem solved, he studied for a few more hours before finally falling asleep. The next morning, the first thing Ian did was meditate, circulating his chi for the full 18 cycles. He could feel the energy within him had noticeably increased. It was New Year's Eve, but the apartment was a mess, so he spent the morning cleaning. After a quick breakfast, his day became a whirlwind of activity, studying, memorizing textbooks, and heading back to the internet cafe to research more. His new stamina was incredible. He worked until midnight without a hint of fatigue. The next day was New Year's Eve. Around 8 in the evening, as Ian was eating frozen dumplings and reading, David came home. He was drunk, but still looked surprised to see his son studying. He couldn't remember the last time he'd seen it. Ian just grunted in acknowledgement and kept eating. David staggered to the sofa, pulled out his wallet, and slapped $500 on the coffee table. He said his bonus was bigger this year, so Ian's New Year's gift was too. Ian calmly took the money and stuffed it in his pocket without a word of thanks. When his father grumbled, Ian replied without looking up that he didn't need to be so formal with his own dad. David suggested they make dumplings and stay up to welcome the new year together, since he wasn't on duty. Ian told him he'd already eaten, and that staying up felt pointless. Outside, fireworks crackled, but inside, the apartment was cold and silent, devoid of any festive spirit. It had been this way every year since his mother left. Ian was used to it. David looked taken aback, and for a moment it seemed he would explode in anger. But he held it in, turning on the TV to watch the New Year's Eve gala in silence. After finishing his meal and washing the dishes, Ian returned to his room to study. Even with a perfect memory, catching up would be difficult. Subjects like physics and math couldn't be mastered just by memorizing formulas. Half an hour later, his father's snores were louder than the television. Ian quietly slipped out of his room. He draped a blanket over his father, then knelt beside him. He gently placed 3 fingers on David's wrist and activated his sense of touch. It was a strange sensation. A web of perception spread out, enveloping his father. His body's internal state materialized in Ian's mind, a 3-dimensional image, clearer than any CT scan. Fatty liver, early signs of a cerebral thrombosis, nodules on his lungs. A cold sweat broke out on Ian's brow. His father looked strong on the outside, but years of heavy drinking had hollowed him out. He could fail to wake up any given morning. A wave of fear and gratitude washed over Ian. If he hadn't chosen the medicine branch, he would have been helpless. His mind raced, formulating several treatment plans. He carefully laid his father flat on the sofa. He retrieved the 7 sacred resonance needles, sterilized them with a flame, and prepared to perform acupuncture. Having only studied medicine for a few days, he didn't dare start on vital areas like the head or chest. He gently rolled up David's sleeve and aimed the first needle at an acupoint on the forearm. He could feel the resistance of the skin and muscle fibers as he slowly pushed the needle in. It was his first time, and he was nervous, sweat beading on his forehead. The needle went in, but he'd missed the point, piercing a capillary instead. A dark bruise immediately formed around the needle. Panicked, he quickly pulled it out. David groaned in his sleep, but didn't wake. Ian wiped his brow, visualized the meridian chart again, and tried a second time. This time, he hit the mark. He gently twirled the needle, and his father let out a soft, contented sigh. Bolstered by this success, he inserted all 7 needles, performing a miraculous technique from the book called the 7 Stars Chasing the Moon, perfect for rebalancing the body. The entire session took 2 hours, leaving Ian feeling drained, but deeply satisfied as he watched his father sleep peacefully. Acupuncture alone wasn't enough. His father needed medicine. The book contained thousands of formulas, several of which were perfect for David's condition. But he knew his stubborn father would never take anything if he knew Ian had prescribed it. So Ian dressed and went out to a 24-hour pharmacy, where he bought 3 boxes of pre-packaged herbal remedies. It was exactly midnight. Fireworks lit up the sky, and the air smelled of sulfur. Ian looked up at the dazzling display and whispered his 3 New Year's wishes to the night. To get into a top university, to have New Year's Eve dinner at the most luxurious hotel in Maple City, and to have money. He didn't know if they would come true. But he was tired of cold, lonely holidays, tired of watching others celebrate while he envied their new clothes and fat cash gifts. This was the beginning of the change. A new year had begun. New Year's Day. A new beginning. David Qin woke from a deep sleep feeling refreshed and clear-headed, his body surprisingly limber. He was puzzled. Usually, waking up on the sofa left him stiff and sore all over. Ian brought him a glass of warm water. He said, "Dad, you're in bad shape. Starting today, you have to stop drinking." David scoffed. "What are you talking about? I feel full of energy." "That's because I gave you a 2-hour massage last night." Ian lied, not daring to mention the acupuncture, especially with the telltale bruise on his father's arm. David beamed. "My son is growing up. I'm serious. Your body has major problems. You're at risk of a stroke at any time." David just laughed. "So what if I am? There's not much worth sticking around for in this world anyway." "How can you say that? Me going to college, getting a job, getting married, having kids. Don't you want to hold your plump, healthy grandson? I don't even know if you'll make it to college, and you're already talking about marriage and kids. That's a pie in the sky too big for me to eat. If Mom saw you like this now, wouldn't she think leaving you was the right choice?" David's face darkened. "Don't you dare mention your mother to me." "I will. You should live well, so that one day you can stand in front of her and tell her, with your head held high, that you're happy, and that her choice back then was complete garbage." Ian retorted. David's anger flared. He raised his hand to strike Ian, but seeing the unwavering determination in his son's eyes, his hand froze in midair. "Your liver, stomach, kidneys, lungs. They all have problems. Please, just listen to me. Quit drinking." David's expression shifted, and after a long moment, he asked in surprise, "How could you tell? From that medical book?" "Yes. It seems I have a talent for medicine." His father's tone softened. The fact that his son was willing to study was encouraging in itself. He conceded, "It's not easy to get into medical school. I think I can make it. Just no drinking, and you have to take this medicine on time." Ian produced the herbal remedies he'd bought. David picked them up and hesitated for a long while before finally agreeing. "Fine, I'll do it for now, but only on the condition that you get into a good university. Otherwise, I'll go right back to drinking. Deal? No backing out." After a breakfast of David's terribly made dumplings, which were somehow worse than the frozen kind, David left for work, taking the medicine with him and reminding Ian to study hard. Ian had never known his mother's side of the family, and his father had alienated most of his own relatives, which made for a quiet holiday season without any family visits. Ian spent the next few days in a cycle of meditation, eating, and studying, memorizing every textbook he had, from required courses to electives. His scores would certainly improve, but it was still a long shot to get into Maplewood University. Math and physics weren't subjects you could master just by memorization. He desperately needed a private tutor. On the 6th night of the new year, feeling restless from studying, Ian decided to take a walk and see the city's festive lights. He found himself passing by Imperial Gardens, the most exclusive villa complex in Maple City, where homes averaged over 30 million. Through the grand gates, he could see pavilions and gardens decorated with colorful lanterns. 2 security guards stood ramrod straight, eyeing him with disdain as he lingered. The desire for a better life is a powerful motivator, especially for a young man on the cusp of adulthood. He stared through the bars for a long time before turning to leave, only to come face to face with a familiar person. Zoe Tang, a classmate and the reigning beauty of their high school. Not only was she gorgeous, with fair skin and long legs, but she was also a top student. It was said her family was incredibly wealthy, and a luxury car dropped her off and picked her up every day. 90% of the boys at school considered her their dream girl, especially Kyle Lin, who pursued her relentlessly, only to be rejected every time. The infamous fight was, in fact, connected to her. Ian's friend Luke had written her a love letter but was too scared to deliver it. He'd bribed Ian with a week's worth of lunches to slip it into her desk, but Zoe had immediately turned the letter over to their homeroom teacher. The teacher checked the security footage and traced it back to Ian. To make matters worse, Luke hadn't signed the letter, so the whole school ended up believing Ian had a secret crush on Zoe. The gossip was followed by reprimands, and worse, it earned him Kyle Lin's enmity. One day after school, Kyle and his cronies cornered Ian, beat him, and broke his leg. Kyle's vicious words still echoed in his mind. "You're a toad trying to eat swan meat. I'll skin you alive for even sniffing in her direction." The Lin family had pressured the school and Ian's father, and the whole affair was swept under the rug with a meager $10,000 settlement. Ian spent half a year in the hospital. His family had no money or connections, so taking a year off to repeat his grade was impossible. He'd returned to school a broken student, his grades plummeting from average to dead last. Now, Zoe stood before him, her face etched with anxiety, her eyes darting around as if searching for something. Ian didn't want to talk to her. The whole incident was just a misunderstanding. He turned to leave, but she called out his name. Ian, which way did you just come from? Her voice was crisp but strained. He scratched his head and pointed vaguely. That way. Did you see a white bichon frise? It has a gold collar, she asked, nervously fiddling with a brown leather leash in her hand. Ian shook his head. Disappointment washed over her face. She turned to hurry back into Imperial Gardens. Did you lose your dog? Ian asked, on an impulse he didn't understand. Yes. My mom gave him to me for my birthday. He's been with me for 3 years. The leash just suddenly broke today. I don't know what I'll do if he's really gone, she said, tears welling in her eyes. I'll help you look. Ian understood the pain of loss and felt a pang of sympathy for her. And besides, she was the only person in class who had never laughed at him. For whatever reason, he wanted to help. No, it's okay. Thank you, she said, shaking her head politely. She didn't have a good impression of him, especially after the love letter incident, and firmly declined. Not everyone is receptive to help when it's offered. Sometimes, the thought of being indebted to someone is a burden in itself. I'm 90% sure I can find your dog, Ian said, his tone firm. Zoe frowned. This doesn't seem like the right time for jokes. She hated people who made empty promises. I guarantee I'll find your dog within an hour, but you have to agree to one condition. What condition? She asked, suddenly wary. Was he trying to take advantage of the situation? Was this about that stupid crush again? We'll talk about that after I find him. You don't have to agree right now. Are you sure you can find Joy? That was the dog's name. We'll know if we try. How will you find him? Does your family work for the traffic bureau? Can you pull up the surveillance footage right now? Zoe was a top student, and she was smart. She wasn't going to be fooled by a few simple words. I have a very powerful nose. A nose? What do you mean? She asked, completely baffled. That leash was for Joy, right? I can track him by his scent. Goodbye, Zoe said, nearly exploding with frustration. This was a complete waste of time. She'd heard of police dogs sniffing out drugs, but a person tracking a lost dog by smell? It was absurd. If you walk away now, you might never see Joy again, Ian said. He wasn't lying. He had examined the leash and noticed it had been cut by a sharp tool. Zoe stopped. She hesitated, then stomped her foot and marched back to him, her large, clear eyes fixed on his. If you're lying to me, I'll kill you. And if your condition is unreasonable, I'll refuse. Ian's heart skipped a beat. A small part of him wanted her to try, but he kept his face serious. I never lie. Just remember your promise. Then get started. Where is Joy? Ian rolled his eyes. Even if he were a psychic, he needed a moment. He took the leash and activated his sense of smell. A tidal wave of scents flooded his senses. The sweet, unique fragrance of the girl standing next to him was particularly distracting, almost making him lose his focus. Can you move a little farther away? Why? She asked, surprised. You're too fragrant. Zoe blushed. She was about to snap at him, but remembering he was trying to find Joy, she bit her tongue and took a few steps back. Ian steadied himself and quickly isolated Joy's unique scent from the leash. He turned to her. Quick, take me to where you lost him. He had to move fast. Activating his senses drained his spiritual energy at an alarming rate. Zoe led him to a busy three-way intersection, the heavy foot traffic making his task infinitely more difficult. The leash broke right here. Then Joy just vanished. Ian didn't speak. He circulated his chi, drawing in countless scents and filtering them out one by one. Suddenly, a single thread of scent cut through the fog. He pointed. That way. He broke into a run, and Zoe followed close behind. Luckily, Joy hadn't gone far. Just as Ian felt his energy reserves bottoming out, they arrived at their destination. Jian's supermarket. It was a slightly out-of-the-way place with a new sign, from which Ian could still smell the strong odor of formaldehyde. Joy is in the supermarket. Are you sure? Zoe asked, incredulous. I'm sure. Ian stared through the glass door at the counter inside. A portly, middle-aged man was helping a customer, his smile warm and friendly, like a kindly neighborhood uncle. Impossible. Mister. Jian is a really nice person. He just gave Joy a sausage a little while ago. Bad guys don't have the word bad tattooed on their foreheads. Are you sure you're not mistaken? It would be so embarrassing to accuse an innocent person. If you want to find Joy, follow me, Ian said, his face grim as he pushed open the door. Welcome, a synthetic voice chirped from a motion-activated toy parrot hanging overhead. Mister. Jian looked up and his eyes met Ian's. A flicker of hostility passed between them. Zoe, what brings you back, Mister? Jian asked, his gaze shifting to the girl behind Ian. Just looking around, she said, glancing nervously at Ian. Oh, is this your boyfriend? No, they both said in unison. Well, feel free to look around then, Mister. Jian said with a smirk. Stop pretending. Hand over Joy, you dog thief. Ian's sudden shout made both Mr. Jian and Zoe jump. A direct accusation? Even if he did take the dog, would he admit it? Wouldn't this just tip him off? 1,000 thoughts raced through Zoe's mind. Mr. Jian's face twisted slightly. Joy, didn't he leave with you? What the hell are you talking about? Joy is in that storeroom in the back. Ian pointed confidently at the rear door. Mr. Jian's body trembled with rage. You little brat, what nonsense are you spouting? You have no proof. I'll call the police on you. Mr. Jian, please calm down. Are you sure you haven't seen Joy? Zoe asked. As much as she wanted to find her dog, the man's earnest expression made her think Ian had made a mistake. I haven't seen him. Now get out. Mr. Jian said coldly, his eyes blazing with anger. Zoe tugged on Ian's sleeve, but he just shook her off and stepped right in front of Mr. Jian. The contrast between them was stark, one tall and thin, the other stout and imposing. Ian tilted his head up slightly and spoke in a voice only Mr. Jian could hear. This isn't the first pet you've stolen, is it? You're the one who cut Zoe's leash. And that sausage you gave Joy? You tampered with it, didn't you? You fool, you left too much evidence. If we call the police, who do you think is going to jail? Mr. Jian's hand moved toward a steel pipe leaning against the counter. There were faint bloodstains on its tip. His eyes glinted with menace. He knew he was in trouble. I know you've killed many pets. The moment I walked in here, I could smell the thick scent of blood. You've killed quite a few, haven't you? Ian stared him down, unafraid. You're full of it, Mr. Jian roared, completely enraged by Ian's words. He grabbed the pipe and swung it at him. Ah! Zoe screamed, horrified that Mr. Jian would actually resort to violence. Ian feigned panic and stumbled backward, shouting, What are you doing? You thief! His eyes darted to the security camera in the top left corner. That angle should capture everything. I'm going to kill you, Mr. Jian bellowed, chasing after Ian with the pipe. Ian ran, and Mr. Jian pursued, knocking over shelves and sending products flying. Customers outside stared, too afraid to enter, some pulling out their phones to record the scene. Zoe quickly fumbled for her phone and dialed the number. Suddenly, Ian's foot caught on something, and he fell to the ground. Mr. Jian, now completely crazed, raised the pipe and brought it down hard toward Ian's head. Ian threw his arms up to block the blows, clearly on the defensive. Stop it. You'll kill him, Zoe cried, rushing forward to try and stop Mr. Jian. The onlookers gasped, fearing for the fallen boy. And at that exact moment, Ian made his move. Just because someone is taking a beating doesn't mean they can't fight back. Sometimes, holding back is about not accidentally killing the other person. Ian's retreat was a complete act, all designed to set up his next move. This man didn't just steal pets, he tortured and killed them. The overwhelming stench of blood that had hit Ian upon entering had sealed the man's fate. The Sacred Gate's creed was to follow one's heart, and right now, Ian's heart demanded justice. He unleashed a punch he'd been holding back, a coiled spring of power. It shot out like a dragon emerging from the sea, slamming into Mr. Jian's ribs with blinding speed. Ian hadn't used his full strength, but he knew the blow was devastating. The entire performance had been for this single, justifiable act of self-defense. He heard a distinct crack. His enhanced hearing picked up the sound of shattering bone. He winced internally. He might have hit a little too hard. It wasn't entirely his fault. He'd only had his new body for a few days and still struggled to control its power. Mr. Jian flew sideways, crashing through 3 rows of shelves. A spray of blood erupted from his mouth midair. When he landed, more blood gushed from his lips like a fountain. He'd clearly suffered internal injuries. Ian stuck out his tongue. This was bad. Even in self-defense, if he'd killed the man, it would be complicated. Zoe was stunned. One moment, Mr. Jian was brutally attacking Ian with a pipe. The next, he was the one on the ground, spouting blood. Come on, let's find Joy, Ian said. The evidence was crucial. Finding the dog would clarify everything. He kicked open the locked door to the second storeroom. The scene inside made them both freeze, and Zoe immediately gagged. The room reeked of blood. A large iron cage held 2 other dogs and a cat. A small white dog, Joy, was frantically throwing himself against the bars. The floor was covered in dark, stained patches. In a corner, a pile of woven sacks sat ominously. The leg of a yellow dog stuck out from one of the unsealed bags. Help! Get Joy out for me. Zoe's voice trembled. Ian had never been a huge fan of pets, especially those whose owners let them run around off-leash, but the sight before him made his teeth grind with rage. Strangely, as Ian approached the cage, Joy, who had been frantic moments before, immediately quieted down, lowering his head as if he'd done something wrong. Ian opened the cage and lifted Joy out. He left the other 2 pets, in case their owners came looking for them. Outside the room, Zoe took Joy, hugging him tightly despite the blood. She quickly checked him over and let out a sigh of relief when she found only a small cut on his left leg. Don't worry, she whispered to Ian, winking. My family will be here any second. You won't get in any trouble. Finding Joy was entirely thanks to him, and she felt guilty for ever doubting him. Suddenly, a furious roar echoed from the front of the store. Zoe, where are you? I'm here, she called back, hurrying out with the dog. That's my third uncle, she explained to Ian. He has a short temper. If he's rude, please don't take it personally. Ian just scratched his head. What did a short temper have to do with him? He was the one who helped. The supermarket was now crowded with a group of men, all dressed in black shirts and pants. It was an intimidating sight. At their head was a man in his 30s with bulging eyes, thick lips, and a round head. He wore a loud floral shirt, a thick gold chain, and a gold watch. This was Zoe's third uncle, Tony Tang. "Zoe, are you hurt? Who did this? I'll kill them." He spotted Ian standing next to her and lunged, grabbing him by the collar. "Was it you, kid?" Ian rolled his eyes. This guy really couldn't tell friend from foe. He placed a hand on the man's wrist and said coldly, "I'm Zoe's classmate. I was helping." "We don't need your help," Tony sneered, trying to use his strength to put Ian in his place. That was it. Ian's patience snapped. This wasn't a short temper. This was just being a bully. With a sudden burst of strength, he twisted Tony's wrist in an unnatural angle. The big man yelped in pain and his knees buckled. It all happened so fast that Zoe didn't even have time to react. She saw her uncle, who was always bragging about being an unbeatable fighter, completely subdued and looking pathetic. For some reason, she let out a giggle. "Uncle Tony, aren't you always saying you're the greatest martial artist in the world? Is this it?" I was caught off guard. "Kid, you better let me go, or I'll mess you up." Ian ignored him completely. Zoe, strangely, didn't ask Ian to let go. Instead, she leaned in and explained the entire situation, from her walk to Ian finding the dog and confronting the thief. "Ow, ow. All right, young man. Uncle Tony was wrong. My mistake. Can you let go now?" Tony finally grunted, his face contorted in pain. "Those who live by the sword, die by the sword," Ian said, before releasing his grip. Zoe looked at Ian in surprise. She remembered him as a failing student, yet here he was, sounding like a well-read scholar. She also noticed, for the first time, how good his skin was. It made him look refined. Honestly, he was kind of handsome. "What does that mean?" Tony grumbled, rubbing his wrist. He was an uneducated man. "It means those who use their strength to bully others will eventually meet someone stronger who will bully them." "Oomph. Pretty boys and their fancy words. You can go home now. I'll handle things here. What about my classmate? Will he need to give a statement?" "You watch too much TV. We don't do things by the book. Besides, this psycho isn't dead. He'll talk. Now scram. Students shouldn't be involved in this messy stuff." Tony waved them away. Tony's men would handle the rest. Zoe and Ian walked out together, heading toward Imperial Gardens. Ian wasn't in a hurry to go home. He still had something to discuss with her. After a few moments of quiet walking, Zoe spoke softly. "How can people be so evil? Some things, I suppose, can only be attributed to human nature. You're not like the Ian I remember. If you didn't look the same, I'd think you were a completely different person. What you see isn't always the truth. That's human nature too." "So philosophical. You like to preach, don't you? At your age, it can make you seem pretentious." "Oh, I'll keep that in mind. Anyway, thank you for today. My uncle, despite being rough, always keeps his word. You don't have to worry about any trouble. You don't have to thank me. Remember, I did it on a condition." Zoe frowned and said quietly, "Fine, but it can't be anything unreasonable." The night was hazy, a thin layer of clouds veiling half the moon. The word unreasonable was a clever choice. The definition of what was unreasonable was entirely in Zoe's hands. Any request could be deemed reasonable if she wished it. Conversely, even the smallest favor could be called unreasonable. Ian glanced at her. "How about you be my girlfriend? Is that request unreasonable?" Zoe's face flushed crimson, her expression one of "I knew it." "Ian, that is completely unreasonable. Over a year ago, if Zoe hadn't reported the love letter, maybe Ian wouldn't have been beaten up by Kyle Lin and wouldn't have spent half a year in the hospital." Of course, Ian didn't blame her. He held no grudge, or he wouldn't have helped her today. The girlfriend proposal was purely a mischievous joke. He knew perfectly well that he and Zoe were worlds apart. A toad and a swan could only be together in one scenario, when the swan was dead, and the toad could finally eat it. "I'm just kidding," Ian said with a casual laugh. "Honestly, you're not my type." Zoe, who had likely never been told that to her face in her entire life, was momentarily stunned. She retorted, "Then why did you write me that love letter?" Ian just shrugged. "We were young. People change their minds. It's normal to be fickle." The letter had been a misunderstanding, but he'd promised to take the fall for Luke back then, and he wasn't about to break that promise now. Zoe rolled her eyes dramatically. "Ian, I never realized you were such a smooth talker. You learn things through experience," he replied nonchalantly. "Get lost," Zoe snapped, hugging Joy tighter and storming ahead. "Hey, are you going back on your word, Miss Tang?" She stopped and turned, exasperated. "Just say it. What do you want me to do?" "There are just over 100 days until the college exams," Ian said, his tone now serious. "I want you to tutor me in math and physics." Zoe's face was a picture of shock, a giant exclamation point followed by a question mark. Tutor him in math and physics? Was she hearing things? This was the school's worst student. He needed a reality check. "Could you repeat that?" "I want you to help me with my math and physics." "I'm sorry, I really can't help you with that." It was a ridiculous request. Tutoring the school's #1 failure in math? If anyone found out, they'd think she was crazy. Besides, she had her own exams to prepare for. She didn't have the time. Oh, I see, Ian said, not sounding particularly upset. He hadn't expected much, so there was no real disappointment. Seeing him genuinely turn to leave, Zoe quickly caught up to him. Could you ask for a different condition? Be my girlfriend? Go to hell, she shot back, her face dark. So you're a liar. Wait. Zoe suddenly called out. Are you asking me to be your girlfriend again? If you keep talking like that, I'm just going to leave. I want to know, do you really want tutoring? Or is this just a way to spend more time with me? Could you be any more conceited? I just want to study hard and get into a good university. I'm really not interested in you. Are you serious? She asked, astonished. It's never too late to have ambition, Ian said, quoting a song lyric. Zoe felt like she couldn't figure this boy out. He'd just scored a 189 on the finals, and he wanted to get into a top university? He was either a madman or a fool. I can try to figure something out for you, she finally said. Give me your phone number, and I'll let you know as soon as I can. I don't have a phone, but... No phone? Are you from this century? Wait here a minute. They had reached the main gate of Imperial Gardens. Without letting him finish, she ran inside, clutching joy. Ian was baffled. She just ran off mid-sentence. How long was a minute? A few minutes later, she returned carrying a shopping bag. On it was the face of a beautiful celebrity, an ambassador for a phone brand. This is the latest Nova Fold phone. It's a foldable screen. Take it. The phone was not cheap. It had to be worth over 10,000. This is a little too much, Ian said, smiling sheepishly. I would have traded 100 phones for joy without a second thought. Besides, my aunt is the celebrity spokesperson. She brought a bunch of these home for the new year. They're free. Even our housekeeper has 3. She decisively pushed the bag into his hands. To her, the phone was worth less than a cheap action figure. Thanks, Ian said, accepting it without further protest. He really did need a phone. I wrote my number on a piece of paper inside. Get a SIM card tomorrow and contact me. Got it. Okay. I have to go home and take care of Joy. His vet should be arriving soon. Right? You go ahead. The dog had its own private vet. Ian couldn't help but feel the vast gulf between their worlds. Thank you again for today. Don't mention it. I got a gift out of it, didn't I? Goodbye. Happy New Year, Zoe said, a slight blush on her cheeks. You too, Ian waved casually. As she ran back into Imperial Gardens, Zoe thought that there was something interesting about Ian. He was completely different from the failing student she thought she knew. Back home, Ian found his father on the sofa watching TV, the volume turned up loud. Thanks to Ian's secret acupuncture and the medicine, David's complexion was much healthier. He'd actually quit drinking, though Ian wondered how long it would last. Ian nodded at his father and started toward his room, but David stopped him. A phone? Who gave you that? David knew Ian had no money to buy something so expensive. A friend. A male friend or a female friend? Female, Ian replied, not thinking anything of it. A girl? Why would she give you a phone? What did you give her in return? How old is she? The veins on David's forehead bulged. A female classmate. She saw I didn't have a phone, so she gave me one, Ian explained, realizing he needed to clear things up before his father got the wrong idea. David stared for a moment, then roared. Is her family rich? She just gives away a phone this expensive? Are they very rich? Ian was taken aback by his father's extreme reaction. He said calmly, I don't know, but they probably are. Give it back. And from now on, you are not to associate with her. David shouted, pointing a finger at Ian's nose. Why? Ian was completely bewildered. Because nothing good will ever come of it. David leaped off the sofa. Good results? Dad, I think you're overthinking this. Ian scratched his head, confused. Perhaps out of some deep-seated insecurity, David Qin insisted Ian return the phone. This infuriated Ian. Dad, have you ever heard of payment for services rendered? David's face was grim. Services? What services did you render? I spent an hour helping this classmate find her lost dog, and I even got into a fight with the dog thief. You got into a fight? David's attention was successfully diverted. Don't worry, it's all taken care of. The phone was a thank you gift. But it's too expensive, David said, his expression softening. He knew Ian never lied. To her, giving me this phone is like giving me a piece of candy. It's not a big deal. You're the only one who thinks it is. She is she, and you are you. A man has to have some dignity. David glared at him. I've been needing to look up a lot of information online lately, Ian explained in a softer tone. We don't have a computer or internet at home, so I have to go to those internet cafes. You know what they're like, smoky, loud, just not a good environment. Besides, I genuinely helped her. That's undeniable. Fine, David said, a look of shame on his face. It's my fault for not being more capable. In the years since he'd started drinking, he drifted through life in a fog. Now that he was sober, old memories were resurfacing, and with them, a familiar, sharp pain in his heart. You're a good dad. You've always made sure I could go to school. When we were short on tuition, you went out and borrowed money. I know how many people look down on you for it. Kid, you need to remember one thing. We live in a different world from rich people. Don't get any funny ideas, and don't get involved with them. The memory of the love letter incident still haunted David. The Tang family of Maple City was on another level entirely. Their daughter was not someone a commoner could ever hope to be with. All people are equal, Ian said, though in his heart, he agreed with his father. Equal my foot. Get back to your studies. Get a phone plan with a lot of data tomorrow. That will be expensive. I'll pay for it. But you're not taking it to school. A lot of my classmates bring their phones to school. I'll just keep it on silent. Don't worry, I won't play on it during class. Every minute of these last 100 days is precious. Where was this attitude before? David grumbled, though he was pleased with Ian's new focus. It's not too late now. Ian took the phone box to his room. Without internet, the new phone couldn't do much. He deleted some pre-installed apps and set a new alarm. His old alarm clock, a companion for over a decade, could finally be retired. Ian studied late into the night, until the lights in the windows outside began to go dark. After his morning meditation, Ian had a quick breakfast and headed to the phone store. Getting a SIM card was easy. He soon had his own number with a monthly plan that had more than enough data. He called his dad first, then dialed the number Zoe had given him. She answered almost immediately, her voice bright and clear. Ian, yeah, this is my number. Are you free right now? I am. Come over to the Excel Education Center across from our school. There's something I need to talk to you about. Okay, see you in a bit. He had no idea what she was up to, but he hailed a taxi and headed over. The radio was playing the local news. Ian wasn't paying much attention until a story caught his ear. It is reported that a supermarket owner, a Mr. Qin, has been stealing pets for years, extorting their owners for ransom. If the owners refused to pay, Mr. Qin would torture and kill the stolen pets with extreme cruelty. Last night, while attempting to steal another pet, he was discovered by the owner. A struggle ensued, and Mr. Qin was subdued and handed over to the police. He will now face the full extent of the law. Ian pursed his lips and muttered, serves him right. Extortion alone, if the amount was large enough, could land him in prison for years. That Tony Tang was certainly efficient. The whole incident was resolved without anyone even questioning Ian, and it was on the news the very next day. It was a testament to the Tang family's influence. Excel Education was a 3-story building. Ian found Zoe in a spacious classroom with another young woman, who looked to be only a few years older than him. This is Ms. Lily Lee. This is my classmate, Ian Qin, Zoe said, making the introductions. Hello, Lily said, looking Ian up and down with curiosity. His clothes were ordinary, but his looks were top-notch, and he had an undeniable presence. Was this really the failing student Zoe had described, the one ranked last in the entire school? Hello, Ms. Lee, Ian replied politely, unsure of what was going on. Ms. Lee is a senior at Maplewood University, Zoe said proudly. She scored a 707 on her college entrance exams. My dad hired her to be my tutor. What's the point of flexing on me like this? Ian wondered. I've already spoken with Ms. Lee, Zoe continued. She can spare 2 hours every day to tutor you in math and physics. But it can only be from 7 to 9 in the evening. How long you want to continue is up to you. Ian didn't agree immediately. A dedicated private tutor like this wasn't cheap. For a senior, just before the exams, a good one-on-one tutor started at $500 an hour. 2 hours a day was $1,000. His family couldn't possibly afford that. I don't have money for a private tutor, he said plainly. There was no point in hiding it. You don't have to pay. My dad already took care of it. You just have to show up on time. I was going to come to Ms. Lee for help whenever I had questions anyway, Zoe said with a smile. Ian was stunned. With over 100 days until the exams, even if he only studied for 50 days, that would be $50,000. He hesitated, then said, I'm sorry, I can't accept. But we had a deal yesterday. You find joy, I help you with your studies. Since I don't have time to tutor you myself, I asked Ms. Lee to do it for me. So of course, I'm the one paying, Zoe said earnestly. You tutoring me and you hiring someone to tutor me are two different things. So you're saying my time isn't valuable? That's not what I mean. Then what do you mean? Lily watched them bicker with amusement, staying silent. How about this? I'll consider the tutoring fee alone. When I have money in the future, I'll pay you back. TCH. So dramatic. Anyway, I found you a teacher. It's up to you whether you learn or not. Last place in the whole school, and you want to get into a top university? That's just a pipe dream, Zoe said, deliberately provoking him before skipping away. Ian was speechless. You know, Lily said, looking at Ian with a strange light in her eyes. By coming to these lessons, you're actually doing me a favor. Strange things were happening a lot lately. Lily's words left Ian completely confused. Me coming to tutoring is doing you a favor? Yes, the logic is quite simple. I'm listening. Zoe's father hired me at a high salary to tutor her until she starts university. But since I began, I've found Zoe to be incredibly bright and motivated. She rarely has questions I need to help with, so I haven't been of much real use. I feel uneasy taking the money without doing the work. When Zoe suggested I tutor you, I immediately agreed. I need to demonstrate my value, Lily explained with a smile. Ian thought for a moment, then bowed deeply. Zoe is Zoe, and I am me. Whether I owe money or a favor, I will repay it all. In his mind, The phone had already squared the debt for finding the dog. Everything else was an extra favor. Lily was taken aback. She shook her head. You certainly don't act like a failing student. Grades aren't a measure of a person's character. I'll start tutoring tomorrow evening. I'll be troubling you then, Miss Lee. It's no trouble. In fact, I'm looking forward to it. Lily had a feeling there was something different about Ian, which made her feel at ease speaking casually with him. Next to the education center was a bookstore. Ian went in and bought review guides for all his subjects. He had memorized the textbooks. Now he needed to distill and memorize the key concepts. His studying was relentless, like force-feeding knowledge, but he never missed a day of cultivating his chi. The energy cluster in his core grew stronger, though he had no idea when or how he would advance to the next level. Talia hadn't told him. For now, he just kept practicing. He studied the review guides until after midnight. Even with his enhanced abilities, his head was spinning. He knew the saying about more haste, less speed. After washing up, he went to bed. The next day, school resumed for the seniors. It said that senior year is the toughest. Students wake up before dawn and study late into the night. It's a brutal, relentless gauntlet. For Ian, with his new powers, this wasn't his only path, but he didn't want to waste his youth and live with regrets. After breakfast, Ian heard the door downstairs, signaling that his friend Luke Qin had left. Ian lived on the 5th floor and Luke on the 4th, so they usually walked to school together. But when Ian got downstairs, he saw Luke far ahead, practically running away. In a hurry to get reincarnated? Ian muttered. Instead of chasing after him, he greeted the white-bearded old man sitting in a lounge chair nearby. The man, whom everyone called Mr. Wong, had moved in 3 years ago. He loved to sunbathe, and Ian always said hello. Did you and Luke have a fight? Mr. Wong asked kindly, rocking in his chair. I'm not sure. Well, hurry along. Don't be late for school. Life is getting tougher for you kids. Mr. Wong waved him off. It's cold out. Not good for your joints. You should go inside soon too. The morning sun is like a drumbeat. I like this cool air, Mr. Wong said, looking at the rising red sun. Ian bowed slightly, and then took off. He caught up to Luke just as they reached the school gates, and he hadn't even used his chi. What are you running for? I'm not running, Luke said coldly. Did you eat a machine gun for the holidays? Why are you so fired up? You're not a real friend. I'm done with you, Luke shouted, attracting the attention of nearby students. How am I not a real friend? Ian asked, puzzled. You have good things, and you don't share them with me. Ian frowned. He remembered Luke acting strangely when he'd shouted about becoming a genius. Had he seen Talia teaching him? But that was impossible to share. Besides, there was only one transformation pill. Even with best friends, some things just can't be shared. Understand? I don't understand. We're done. Think about it again. I have other things too. We're done. Luke insisted. Fine, we're done. Don't come crying to me later. Ian had a temper too. He strode into the school. The first class was English. Ian, who usually slept through it, was now flipping through a massive dictionary, page after page. Luke, sitting across the aisle, muttered, putting on a show. Can you even understand it? You got a 31 on the last English test. Ian's hearing was sharp now. He could hear Luke's muttering clearly even without focusing his senses. He shot him a glare and went back to the dictionary. He planned to memorize the entire thing. At the end of class, Ian was about to continue reading when he noticed Zoe Tang at the front of the class, winking at him. She clearly wanted to talk. She didn't approach him directly, probably to avoid attracting Colin's attention. Ian gave a slight nod, and Zoe left the classroom first. The two of them left one after the other, looking like a couple on a secret date. They thought no one noticed, but a pair of eyes was watching them. On the side of the academic building near the cafeteria, where it was quiet, Zoe was waiting. When Ian caught up, she immediately asked, Are you a martial arts expert? No, Ian said, wary. But my uncle said you broke 4 of Mr. Jin's ribs with one punch. He almost died. Only someone with internal energy, a real martial artist, could have that kind of power. I was desperate. I don't know how I had so much strength. Really, Zoe was no fool. I remember reading once that in moments of extreme panic or stress, people can display several times their normal strength, like lifting a car with one hand or surviving underwater for hours. Fine, don't tell me. But Mr. Jin is shameless. He's claiming to be mentally ill to avoid criminal charges. What's going to happen? Ian was furious at the thought of the man getting away with it. My uncle says it's actually for the best. He's probably being sent to a psychiatric hospital right now. He was only going to get 3 to 5 years in prison. Now, he won't be getting out for at least 10. He serves him right, Ian said, marveling at the Tang family's power. They chatted a bit more about the tutoring. Zoe left first. As Ian was about to head back, he noticed someone lurking in the distance, watching them. Ian raised an eyebrow. Even from far away, he recognized Zoe's best friend, Laura Gao. But it was break time, so any student could be anywhere. He didn't think much of it. Laura was Zoe's friend. She probably wouldn't gossip. He quickly returned to class. Luke Qin managed to ignore Ian for the entire morning. Ian, busy memorizing, didn't bother with him either. Some things were just impossible to explain. At noon, Ian called his father to tell him about the evening tutoring. Hearing it was free, David readily agreed and even offered to call the homeroom teacher to excuse Ian from the evening study hall. After lunch in the cafeteria, Ian went back to his books, but he sensed a strange atmosphere. People were pointing and whispering, giving him a bad feeling. Kyle Lin, being from a wealthy family, never ate in the cafeteria. With some time before the afternoon classes, he stormed into the classroom and marched straight to Ian's desk. He kicked the desk hard, the screeching sound turning every head in the room. "Come outside with me. I need to ask you something." "I don't have time." Ian kept his eyes on his book. "Stop pretending you're some big shot. You can't even read that. Get out here." Kyle reached for Ian's collar. "I'm warning you, I'm studying. Get lost." Ian's gaze was ice cold. They were already enemies. The fact that Ian hadn't sought revenge was a mercy. Now, Kyle was pushing his luck. Enraged, Kyle swung a fist at Ian's face, not caring that they were in a classroom. Ian, still seated, feigned a block with his arm, establishing that Kyle had thrown the first punch. Then, with lightning speed, he shot out a kick, catching Kyle square in the stomach. The force sent Kyle flying from Ian's desk to the back wall of the classroom, where he collapsed, howling in pain. "Get out," Ian said, glancing up at the security camera at the back of the room. It was annoying. Otherwise, he would have given Kyle a proper beating. The other students were stunned. When had Ian become so fierce? Wasn't he the sickly kid who barely even participated in gym class? Luke Chin's jaw dropped. Good heavens, had Ian slept with a martial arts master? Zoe Tang wasn't back from lunch yet, so she missed the dramatic scene. It took Kyle a while to get up, a look of pure confusion on his face. The kick had hurt, but it had also scared him. He hadn't even seen Ian's foot move. It was like he'd seen a ghost. After a moment of hesitation, he didn't dare press the attack. This kid was acting strangely, his fighting ability suddenly off the charts. "You just wait." Kyle clutched his stomach and hobbled out of the classroom, gritting his teeth. As captain of the school basketball team, Kyle had a crew of loyal friends. They were the ones who had helped him break Ian's leg before. Since he couldn't handle Ian alone, he was undoubtedly going to get back up. Ian didn't even spare him a glance, returning to his book as if nothing had happened. "Bro, have you been training?" Luke asked, sidling up with a sycophantic grin. "Yeah, my dad heard that to cure my illness, I need to get stronger, so he hired a martial arts master to teach me." Ian made up a plausible excuse for his newfound abilities. "How long have you been training? Aren't we not on speaking terms? Why should I tell you?" Ian snorted and went back to his book. Luke scratched his head at a loss. In the afternoon, during Ms. Lu's class, her face was a thundercloud. Kyle Lin was still absent. When the bell rang, Ms. Lu called out, "Ian Qin, come to my office." Ms. Lu was a thin woman in her 40s with high cheekbones that squeezed her eyes into triangles. She sat at her desk, flipping through a lesson plan, ignoring Ian who stood beside her. "Ma'am, if you have something to say, please say it. If not, I'm going back to study." Ian knew she disliked him and got straight to the point. Ms. Lu looked up and glared. "Your father called. He said you're taking a leave from evening study hall to attend tutoring?" "Yes, that's right." "Tutoring? What kind of tutoring?" she asked skeptically. With a score of 189, every one of Ian's subjects was a disaster. She couldn't imagine what could possibly be worth tutoring. Ian was about to say math and physics, but then a thought occurred to him. Gym class. Gym class. Ms. Lu almost fainted from anger. Of all the times he was getting tutored in gym? "Technically, I'm learning martial arts." "Martial arts? What? Are you planning to be a security guard after high school?" "Just to get stronger," Ian said, frowning. Ms. Lu pondered for a moment, then stared at him. "A student reported this afternoon that you and Kyle Lin had a fight, and that you injured him. Is that true?" "He hit me. I was defending myself." It was no surprise she had spies in the class. And from her tone, it seemed Kyle hadn't reported it to her, otherwise she wouldn't be asking. "In your sophomore year, Kyle Lin broke your leg. Have you forgotten that? You need to remember your family's situation, and his." "I haven't forgotten. I also remember how the school protected him," Ian said, his expression turning cold at the mention of the past. "How dare you speak like that? Your father agreed to the settlement with the Lin family and signed the papers. Our school was just respecting the wishes of both parents. Black will always be black. No matter how you try to paint it, you can't make it white. You infuriating boy. You're terrible at studying and terrible at dealing with people. When you get out into the real world, you'll find it impossible. You'll be one of the ones who gets left behind. I'm not going out into the real world just yet, because I'm going to college." "With your grades, you think you can get into college?" "I'm not just going to college. I'm going to a top university." Ms. Lu burst out laughing, as if she'd just heard the funniest joke in the world. "If you can get into a top university, I'll jump off this building. I guess your father was right to have you learn martial arts. At least it doesn't require a brain." "What a piece of work," Ian muttered, turning to leave. "What did you say?" Ms. Lu was laughing so hard she didn't hear him clearly. Ian walked out of the office as if he hadn't heard her. "Go tell your father that even if you don't attend evening study hall, you still have to pay the fee. Don't come begging me for an extension when you can't pay it on time." she shouted after him, attracting the attention of several other teachers. A loud bang echoed from outside. The office wall seemed to shake. Ms. Liu rushed out. There, on the wall just outside her office door, was a clear fist print. The force required to leave such a mark was immense. Ms. Liu's face went pale. The boy who had just left had apparently become someone not to be trifled with. Maybe learning martial arts wasn't a complete dead end for him after all. With that kind of power, he might even win a championship in MMA. As she mused, she suddenly felt it was necessary to have a talk with Kyle Lin. The evening break was from 5 to 5:40. Ian had a quick bite in the cafeteria, then grabbed his backpack and headed to the Excel Education Center across the street. He was early, so Lily wasn't there yet. Fortunately, students with private tutors could use the study rooms for free. It was much quieter than the school. Ian took out his books and continued to review. Even with his photographic memory, he had a lot of ground to cover. He had to make every second count. After studying for a while, he glanced at his phone and saw a text from Zoe. It had come in earlier, but his phone had been on silent. The reason Kyle confronted you at lunch was because someone saw us talking during the break and told him. So nosy. He's looking for people now. Be careful. Don't worry about it. Ian texted back. The image of Laura Gao's innocent-looking face popped into his mind. Could she have been the one who told Kyle? He couldn't be sure. It could have been any student. A while later, Zoe replied, annoying. Ian wasn't sure if she was annoyed by Kyle's relentless pursuit or by the conflict between him and Kyle. She didn't elaborate, so he didn't reply. He switched his phone to vibrate and set it aside. Worrying was pointless. The only thing to do was to become strong enough to face any challenge. At 7 o'clock sharp, Lily arrived, and their first tutoring session began. Lily had planned to start with the basics, assuming Ian was a failing student, but he quickly vetoed that idea. I've already gone over all the basic concepts. You don't need to review them. What I need now is for you to teach me how to apply them correctly to solve every problem. Are you sure you've gone over everything? Lily scratched her head. While this saved a lot of time, she was skeptical. How could the last place student claim to have mastered all the foundational knowledge? Here, you can quiz me on anything in these 2 books. Ian pushed the math and physics review guides toward her. Lily needed to gauge his actual level to tailor her teaching. She picked up the math guide. All right, let's talk about derivatives. A derivative is... Ian recited, listing all 9 key concepts flawlessly. You've memorized it all? Physics too. Lily was dumbfounded. Was this really the last place student? Were students this competitive now? She had expected teaching Ian to be a struggle, but it was turning out to be the complete opposite. I've memorized the review guides for all 6 subjects, Ian confirmed. Are you really in last place? Lily felt the need to ask again. I scored 189 on the last exam. I was definitely in last place. That just doesn't make sense. It's a fact. Lily hesitated for a moment, then pulled out a small notebook. This is a summary of 386 fundamental problem types in high school math, compiled by 7 of us who scored over 700 on the college entrance exams. Most current problems are variations of these. Work through these basic problems first and memorize the solution steps. Excellent. Ian hadn't expected such a treasure. Ms. Lee was clearly a high-level tutor. No wonder Zoe, who must have studied these, consistently scored above 140 on her math tests. The problem set was just a stack of A4 paper in a simple binder, but Ian didn't underestimate it. The Sacred Gates medical text had looked just as unassuming. As he was working, his phone vibrated. Seeing that Lily didn't seem to mind, he checked it. It was a text from Zoe. Kyle is searching the school for you like a madman. Go straight home after tutoring. I have half an hour of class left. Tell him to wait for me at the school gate and not to leave. Are you crazy? Kyle's the one who's crazy. I'm going to cure him. You're both crazy. I'm staying out of it. He managed to do over 30 problems that day. Because they were fundamental types, they were relatively simple, but he still got 12 wrong. Lily checked his work and told him to do another 30 at home, and they would go over the mistakes tomorrow. After the session, Ian slung his backpack over his shoulder and left the center. Across the street, by the main gate of the school, stood 5 tall figures. All were over 6 feet tall, all members of the school basketball team. Leading them was Kyle Lin. I hear you're looking for me? Ian shouted across the street. Kyle, who had been focused on the school, whipped his head around, the veins on his neck bulging. You actually dare to show your face? I haven't done anything wrong. Why wouldn't I? Just you wait. Don't you dare run. Kyle motioned for the others, and they all charged across the street toward Ian. Ian watched them calmly. Among them were the 2 who had helped break his leg. It was time to settle all accounts, old and new. Kyle stopped a short distance from Ian and jabbed a finger in his face. What's your relationship with Zoe? Ian paused, then retorted, she's not your girlfriend. What business is it of yours what our relationship is? You little brat, are you looking for a beating? I warned you, if you go near her, I'll skin you alive. You're definitely sick. Twisted because you can't get the girl, right? Tell me, how far have you 2 gone? Kyle's expression was savage. The 4 other players moved to surround Ian, trying to look tough. Seeing Kyle's state, an idea sparked in Ian's mind. He pulled the phone from his pocket. See this? Zoe gave it to me. She's also paying for my tutoring. And the other night, we were together. Well, some things I can't tell you. Not for kids. Kyle's face turned a shade of purple, as if he were about to have a stroke. He pointed a trembling finger at Ian, unable to speak. The Lin and Tang families were old friends. Kyle had been infatuated with Zoe since childhood, seeing her as his goddess and vowing to marry her. But she was always cold to him, which made him lash out at any boy who got close to her. This dark, possessive mindset was deeply ingrained. Zoe was his trigger. Get him. If you kill him, I'll take the blame. As soon as the words left Kyle's mouth, the four others moved to attack. Wait! Ian suddenly shouted. You're scared? There are too many people here. If you kill me, it'll be a mess to clean up, right? Why don't we find a quieter place? Ian said calmly. When Kyle heard Ian suggest finding a quiet place, he was delighted. Over there, he said, pointing. He indicated a construction site for a new development his family owned. On the far west side of the site were a few isolated, single-story houses. They had been holdouts, demanding an exorbitant price. Kyle's father had simply redrawn the development plans to exclude them. When the homeowners realized they wouldn't get a penny, they begged to be bought out, and the company acquired the land for a pittance. The houses had yet to be demolished. It was perfectly quiet. Ian was satisfied and started walking in that direction. One of the basketball players, Ben Chung, sidled up to Kyle. He seems awfully confident. You sure this is a good idea? It's fine, Ben. He's learned a little martial arts and thinks he's invincible. What an idiot. Under a large tree on the school grounds stood two girls, Zoe Tang and her best friend, Laura Gao, a delicate-looking girl. Ian is in for it now, Laura said with a smile. I wonder who told Kyle about me talking to Ian. So annoying. Maybe they meant well. Maybe they were worried you'd get mixed up with that poor, sickly kid. Why do you sound so harsh today? Zoe glanced at her friend. Do I? Isn't that what everyone usually says about him? Do they? Miss Perfect Student has her head in the books. When would you ever notice a nobody like him? He might not be what you think. We've been classmates for 2.5 years. I know exactly what he's like. I'm going. I need to study. Zoe frowned, an irritable feeling creeping over her. She didn't want to continue the conversation. Aren't you going to watch the show? The poor kid might get beaten to death. Who dies remains to be seen, Zoe retorted, walking back toward the school building. Wait for me, Laura called, trailing after her with a hint of disappointment. It was after 9 o'clock. The area was dark, with only a few small lights on the construction fence providing a faint glow, casting long, blurry shadows. The five of them surrounded Ian. As the school's star basketball players, they were used to working together as a team. Tonight, the ball was a person. Kyle glared at Ian, snarling. You little brat, I said I'd skin. In that instant, Ian moved. His fist shot out like lightning, a dull thud as it connected with the left side of Kyle's chest. His extended knuckles struck a pressure point with precision. Kyle let out a strangled cry, clutching his chest, instantly neutralized. The other four froze, stunned by the ferocity of the attack. But they were committed now. They all swung at Ian. Ian didn't know any formal martial arts, but his speed, strength, and senses were far beyond theirs. Taking them down was easy. With a flurry of punches, he struck each of them at precise points on their bodies. After the incident with Mr. Jian, Ian understood how the rich and powerful operated. He needed to hurt Kyle badly, but without leaving obvious marks that would cause trouble later. With the college exams so close, he couldn't afford to get tangled up with the police. In a flash, all five were on the ground, groaning in pain, staring at Ian with terror in their eyes. 5 against 1, and they didn't even stand a chance. Was this guy even human? Ian slowly walked over to Kyle and squatted down, patting his cheek. With this little strength, you wanted to skin me? Ian, you just wait. I'll get people to kill you. I'm afraid you won't be saying that in a minute. Ian pulled a needle pouch from his pocket and slowly, gently, opened it. What are you doing? Even in the dim light, Kyle could see the cold glint of the silver needles. Oh, I forgot to tell you. I didn't just learn some martial arts. I also learned a bit of medicine. I thought I'd practice on you. Get away from me. The faint light, combined with Ian's demonic smile, sent a chill down their spines. Ian planted a foot on Kyle's chest to hold him down, then flicked the 7 silver needles in his hand. I'm new at this. If you move around and I accidentally kill you, don't blame me. Kyle trembled with fear. Get that filthy thing away from me. If you dare try anything on me, my family will not let you go. Ian just smiled. You're rich and powerful. You can break someone's leg and face no consequences. My life isn't worth much, but just like you, I only have one. With a flick of his wrist, he expertly inserted a needle into the center of Kyle's forehead, leaving only the head of the needle quivering outside. It wasn't just Kyle screaming. The other 4 were screaming too. The madman was serious. He'd pushed that long needle all the way in. Would it scramble his brain? Ian ignored them, his hands a blur as he placed 3 more needles into Kyle's head. Kyle's eyes rolled back, and his body convulsed, his limbs as stiff as stone. This was the 7-needle soul seizure, a rare technique from the medical book. It was used to control violent, delirious patients. The book explained that the first 4 needles caused immense pain, while the final 3 would render the patient completely unconscious. Ian had only inserted 4. He hadn't yet administered the 5th. Kyle must be in agony. This is a technique I just learned. It's called the 7-needle death touch. If all 7 needles are inserted, the person dies peacefully. Not even the best equipment or the most skilled medical examiner could find a cause of death. So what do you say? Should I continue? Ian deliberately terrified the other 4. Don't. Please, we were wrong. The 4 players were utterly broken, sobbing and snotting. They knew one thing for sure. If Ian really did kill Kyle, who knew if he'd kill them to silence them? Ian watched their tearful display with a cold smile. Fine. But first, you'll swear an oath that you'll never bother me again. He pulled his phone from his pocket. The new phone came in handy. The 4 didn't dare refuse, especially with Kyle twitching and foaming at the mouth beside them. Kneeling or squatting, they huddled together and swore an oath into Ian's phone camera. The scene was almost comical. We swear to the heavens, we will never bother Ian Qin again. If we do, may we be struck by lightning, hit by a car, and may our children. As heaven is our witness. The new phone was impressive. Its night mode was powerful enough to capture their faces clearly. Ian turned back to Kyle, muttering to himself. Maybe I should just let him die from the pain.